Welcome back, guys. This is section two of my discussion of this plot line of The Black Parade. And last time I told you my interpretation of the story that made the album. Yep, a few points I made are probably very different from the points that you thought of when you saw the album. I'm sure I omitted a lot of things while I talked about that album. There's a lot of points, there's a lot of nitty gritty. But I think the biggest thing, the nitty gritty that wasn't there that needed to be, were the songs Blood and Kill All Your Friends. Now, most of you know Blood. It's a song hidden at the end of the album. It kind of fits in the album if you're willing to say it was just cut and it should have been somewhere else in the album. It kind of fits if you take it as a joke that he wakes up in the hospital and it's like, oh God, all of that was for nothing and now I'm kind of stuck here. Um, but I think that wasn't originally the case. And I don't think Kill All Your Friends was supposed to be a Japanese exclusive song because Gerard himself said in a tweet, I believe, that it was a key part of the album that was cut. And I think that's important because I think what happens in this version of the storyline is that the man himself survived the war and the entire album was supposed to have been based around him still being alive. Let me explain. I think that what was supposed to have happened was this man had mental problems, as seen in teenagers, and he was rejected by a girl. She told him no. He tried to ask her out, he tried to marry her. Something happened that she said no. And he got angry and he went to war. And he learned how to fight. He learned how to do all of these things. And then he came back more warped than ever. And when he came back, I believe that is the intention of when Kill All of Your Friends takes place. He comes back and he finds out she's married with another man. He sees her at a funeral and realizes the only way he's going to get to keep seeing her is if he kills off the people that they mutually know. And I believe that maybe the main intention of the album was still the same. And I believe that maybe the point about learning how to let go and carry on was the same. But I believe someone in the studio said, no, this is way too dark, and axed it. So, why do I think these things? Well, first of all, let's talk about Kill All Your Friends. It is very blunt. The man is at a funeral. The woman he likes is there. And he basically says the only way I still get to see all the people from my past is if I kill them. Now, we know from the album proper, he's a soldier. He knows how to use weapons, he knows how to use guns. He has tactical training, and he probably uses it to become a successful serial killer. I think that the song itself probably would have been placed somewhere earlier in the album, potentially before House of Wolves, because I think House of Wolves in this version of the album would have been at one of the funerals after he's killed one of his friends, and he's basically having this paranoid delusion of the people around him knowing what he's done. And he even says, and this doesn't fit in the current version of the album, that as the blood runs down the halls, or the walls, you see me creeping up these halls. I've been a bad mother blank, sister, or tell your sister I'm another one. Now go, go, go. And it's basically implying he's a creep and that he is sneaking down people's hallways and there's blood all over the place. And I think that doesn't really fit the soldier storyline of the original album. I think it fits more as he's at his friend's funeral and he's basically in his own head talking to the woman he's obsessed with, saying, I am a bad person. You should avoid me, but I'm not going to let you. There's also references to ambulances in House of Wolves that I guess even in my interpretation of a cancer patient, or at least the way the album portrays it, he went to the hospital and got a hospital bed. He didn't collapse. And yet, in this version, if you interpret it as he's literally saying the ambulances are coming to pick up the bodies of his friends, it might make more sense. And I think that the other problem is in this version, Welcome to the Black Parade, which was originally called The Five of Us Are Dead, implied that and I know that that comes from the band. I think it's also he killed five of his friends. And he's the supposed ringleader of the Black Parade. And the parade itself is the parade of his dead friends. And he's speaking to them saying, you'll carry on. Your memory's going to carry on, etc. And I think one of the hints in that is it says, look at the disappointed faces of your peers. In other words, look at the people you've let down by what you're doing. And I think that potentially, if you follow the storyline of this album in this version, Cancer might have been a very late addition to the album, and it might have actually replaced Kill All of Your Friends. And I think it might have been part of the shift to trying to adjust the album to the more literal death scenario. But I don't know that for certain. But I think the album was supposed to progress to he's obsessively stalking this woman. All the references about cheating, all the references about you don't love me anymore were meant to be much more stalker-ish. And him delusionally misunderstanding she's not cheating on him, she's literally with somebody else and you're a creep. And I think that might fit more with like, or at least somewhat the same as not letting go when you really should and carry on with your own life. And I think if Cancer was originally supposed to be on the album, it was supposed to be much closer to the end of the album. So I think what was supposed to happen throughout this album was that you have the story that he's gone to war, you have Mama, you have him coming home, you have him becoming delusional, and then you're supposed to come to the part where basically the police are after him and he flees home. And again, I think this was too dark. I do think it's too dark. I think it gets the wrong point across and it would be very hard to see through all the darkness. But I think he might go home to the person he blames for all of his problems, and that's his mother. And in this case, Sleep would have been a much more literal song. He is literally toasting himself for all the bad things he's done in front of his mother. And instead of just sleep being go to sleep and rest, it's he's telling her to just die. And I think in this version of the album, he either shoots her, strangles her, or in some other way kills her, and then almost snaps out of his own delusion and starts screaming, "Wake up," at the body. And I think at this point he's supposed to become arrested, and that leads into blood. And I think in this version, he either doesn't die of cancer, or his death is in his own head, and he becomes completely insane. And I think the song itself, Dead, is very much near the end of this album, and it might have originally been written from the perspective of the woman who has seen all of her friends die, basically calling him a bad person and saying you got what you deserved, but at the same time you had all these things happen to you that led you to be this way. I also still think Teenagers fits better on this because it shows the warped mind that he had before he went to war, and it shows how he never got past it. Now, I could be wrong, but I think if you piece together the album in a different way and you include the 2 bonus tracks, that storyline actually makes more sense and has less plot holes than the current version of the album. Guys, I hope I explained that well. I hope that I at least got my point across well enough that you can listen to the album yourself again. Try to fit in those 2 songs to other parts of the album. try shifting the album songs around and see what you think. Does it make sense that there was a second hidden plot on this album? Do you agree that the main theme of the album was regret, anger, and distaste, and learning how to let it go and just live your life and understand that if you don't, you'll go to your grave with regrets that you can never fix? I think those are powerful points. I think they're good points. And I think that on either version of the album, the intention was to get to that point. I think in the current version, while the story has become very scattered, I believe because the album itself was restructured, the point comes through much more clearly because you can see the phases of mourning, basically. And hey guys, this is Winter from the Future. I'm just cutting into my own video here because I forgot to talk about The Sharpest Lives. I think The Sharpest Lives is one of the most distinct songs that hints there might have been another storyline originally. And my reason for believing that is I think this song was supposed to indicate he had just committed his first murder once he arrived home from war. I think that throughout the album, when he discusses the choir and the band, he's actually supposed to be referencing his friend group, the supporting cast of the story. And I think when he says away with the boys in the band in The Sharpest Lives, he's literally saying he's doing away with them. And I think the chorus indicates he is drinking away his pain, and he is basically saying to the woman he's obsessed with, if you will pay attention to me, if you would give me your time, I would stop doing what I'm doing. And he basically also admits that that's a bad idea. He's saying he will go with the vampires. He will live in the night. He will be the killer in the darkness. And she should leave him like anyone who's sane would do. And I don't know. It's hard to tell because I think that other things may have been cut from the album to modify it. I think the second verse implies she might have started cheating with him at some point. Obviously, she was not aware that he was a killer. But it does say that Juliet loves the beat and the lust it commands. And if you see the whole album as this warped musical performance, and all of his friends are the supporting band or the supporting cast, and he is the main singer, and she is maybe the protagonist's love interest, it's saying that Juliet loves the beat and the lust it commands. In other words, she may have searched for comfort in his arms while they were both losing all of their friends. And that's pretty dark because it implies she doesn't know he's a killer. And she's searching for happiness and recovery from the man who's actually causing all of her pain. And then, of course, it says, drop the dagger. And I always heard laugh at the blood on your hands, but apparently it's lather the blood on your hands, Romeo. And again, I don't think that's a proper way to describe a soldier. I think that it fits more if he is hunting down his friends and killing them with a knife, and he's going more and more insane. So I think that is the main thing I wanted to add, that I believe The Sharpest Lives very much suits the album being about a serial killer and not just a soldier. And I would like to make it clear there are many other lines in the album that I don't have the time to get into today that to me hint there was originally a darker theme, darker than it already is. But there are a lot of lines that only make sense if you interpret them as there's something very wrong with this man beyond just PTSD. Look at This Is How I Disappear. If that song was originally from the protagonist or the patient's point of view, he says things like, you drown all the boys and girls inside of your head, and says, tell me if you get there if all the good girls go to heaven, and things like that. And that implies people are dying besides him. And he's not killed his woman that he's obsessed with, or maybe he has, depending on where they originally meant to put it in the album. But I think it means he's literally asking a female friend of theirs, a mutual friend, when she dies and gets to heaven, let him know if all the good girls have gone to heaven. So I think most songs on this album, with a few slight modifications, very much fit, unfortunately, the serial killer storyline that I believe originally existed. All right, guys, back to the original podcast.